participate with me and the viewer.
I thought we were going to bring in Senator David Leyonhjelm rather than you just sort of, you know, talk about what Penny Wong said. We've had the good senator waiting patiently.
On this show. God forbid I say anything. No, okay. Anyway.
You picked up. You were offering some observations. I was silent, and I got in trouble for being silent.
No, okay. All right, we are going to bring David Leyonhjelm, but there he is. He's on screen now. Welcome to the program, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator.
Now you're going to start attacking our directors for not following your direction. You know, I don't say enough. I say too much. David Leyonhjelm's been brought in too early. I tell you.
Lord
of the Flies.
We can discuss later which one of us is Piggy. Anyway, David Leyonhjelm, thanks for coming on To The Point. You know, before we do talk to you, I did want to you've got an ad out. You've got a new ad out today.
You've got a few ads out.
You've got a few ads today, but you had one in particular that caught my eye. It was described as possibly the weirdest ad in an Australian election campaign.
By who?
By another media outlet, not Sky News.
Right.
So why don't we have a quick look at that and talk to you about one of your key issues, which you highlight in this advertisement.
Oi, Bill, Mel, back off. That's my super.
Mel and Bill are coming after your super. Mel even wants to limit what you started building up 9 years ago. We need to get them under control.
Can I ask, presumably part of the strategy is to do something a bit quirky to get attention, because getting attention when you're not one of the major parties is half the battle in an election campaign.
Yes, it is. That's right. Yes, getting attention.
Did we just charge you for that ad, by the way?
We didn't run the full ad. Fair use.
That's the final message out. Yes, that's right. Now, one of the issues also is that with such a long election campaign, people are engaged for the first few days, and then they tune out. Then they tune back in again when they know that it's getting close to voting time. So to be noticed, to break through, I suppose, you have to do something a bit out of the box. So getting a couple of little pugs along to eat my nest egg, my superannuation nest egg, to make the point that, that you know, the major parties were after it, allows us to distinguish ourselves.
And also painting them as Tweedledum and Tweedledee in the sense, you know, two pugs looking identical, not
we
much
are going to
different.
get such feedback from pug lovers. You've just annoyed a very substantial
You know
part
what I
of the
don't like
population,
about the pug dog? Like, the problem with the pug
God,
dog
no,
is the tail sits bolt upright. There's no kind of privacy there.
Peter, could you just insult another breed, I just don't want the tweets that are about to come
I find the pug quite a cute dog, but its tail is bolt upright. It's an unpleasant side of the dog.
I love pugs, for the record. I love cats, dogs, and all those animals.
Like pugs are lovely
Send
dogs.
your tweets to Peter Van Onselen.
Yes.
David Leyonhjelm, you do love cats. We could talk about that another show, though. However...
How do you know that? Is that true?
Yes.
Well, you're a vet, though, by training, aren't you?
Yes. I have 4 cats, and...
This is a side question, but as a vet, do you sort of feel like you understand anatomy well enough that you kind of treat your own ailments, or do you go see a doctor?
Oh, my God.
You've got to know your limitations.
I've always wondered about whether
Sorry, can I
You need to know your limitations. Yeah.
Yesterday, Peter asked if you could eat dairy cows.
That's a legitimate question.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Oh, God, okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, no, I mean, and within limitations, that's possible. Most vets are a bit wiser about their health than a layman is.
You're losing
I don't want to go too far on that analogy. I mean, if we scratch, doesn't mean we've got fleas, for example.
Okay, so you are talking about a serious issue, superannuation.
Yes.
You seem to be the lone voice in this election. Don't touch super, make no changes to super. Is that your position?
Yes.
There should be no changes whatsoever?
Or just no retrospective changes?
No, we don't think what either of the major parties is proposing is legitimate. We think it's an increase in taxes, and we don't support any increase in taxes. If this is not about reform of the superannuation system, this is just a revenue-raising thing by both parties. So they want to spend the money on something else, and they see this as just an opportunity to raise money. If there was reform of the superannuation system, we would do it a different way. Our argument is that you wouldn't tax any of the money going in, or while it's there in the fund, but you would tax it at normal marginal tax rates on the way out, as income.
That's something Peter and I have discussed before in this program. And
the difficulty is the black hole of making the change.
Yeah, the transition.
You can't do it retrospectively. In a sense, the architect of super, whom I admire for that, Paul Keating, also when he made the change, kind of stuffed it up. It's a little bit like, these two would hate it because they can't stand each other, but, well, at least Paul Keating doesn't like John Howard, but it's a bit like John Howard, I think, as the architect of getting the GST, and I think that was great, but the way it was designed makes it hard to then fix it subsequently. It was a bit like that with what Paul Keating did on super.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Good article in that, actually.
And the governments...
You could write it while I talk to the camera.
The governments are so addicted to tax revenue that the idea that they wouldn't receive the taxes on the way in, well, the money on the way in, the 15% and the 15% when it's in there, they just can't imagine how they could exist without all that revenue at their disposal. So that's the problem. And you're right, there's a transition issue, but you could do that with tax credits. So you would tax it as marginal income on the way out, but you would get a credit for tax already paid. So that's not so hard to do, but the biggest burden, really, the biggest hurdle, if you like, is this addiction to money. They just can't get over the idea that they can do with less money.
You really are running this line in this campaign that you are the one person standing up for true Liberal values, and it's been reported you're getting a lot of support from Liberal Party members who are opposed to these changes. Is that something really widespread, or is that just a few people who've made comments to you? Is there a way you can quantify the type of support you're receiving?
Yeah, it's a serious amount of support we're getting. How to...
Is it financial? Is it broader than New South Wales? Is there the...
All of that. Yesterday, I'll just give you an example. Yesterday, I and a couple of my team flew to Melbourne at the invitation of somebody who had contacted us purely over the superannuation issue and had said, we can't stand it anymore. They're both after our super. The Liberal Party we thought was our party on our side. It's not anymore. So we have to do something about it. I'm going to organise a lunch and I'd like you to come down and speak to it. So we did. I went down and spoke to this group. We walked out with a 5-figure cheque, plus more to come.
All right.
So serious money involved in this, and there are people who are Liberal supporters who are very, very cranky about it.
So you walk out with a 5-figure cheque. Fair enough, that's perfectly legal under our donation system. We've had a lot of discussion in the past 24 hours and even longer about political donations, but highlighted on a program on the ABC last night, Michael Yabsley making an argument that there needs to be some substantial change to political donations.
Do you agree with his argument there?
Well, I didn't hear his argument.
He wants, I think, a cap of $500 to individuals. So no union donations, you'd have to get through that.
No corporate donations.
No corporates either.
Just individuals could donate, capped at $500.
There'd be constitutional hurdles potentially in this around political free speech.
So how do we, and I must say in New South Wales we looked at different things that you could do, and you always did run into constitutional type hurdles. If you had the, say, a balance of power position in the next Senate, what type of changes would you be arguing for?
Well, we would take the view that you've got a right to do with your own money what you like. It's your money. If you want to give it to a political party, that should be your business. The only thing is transparency, that it should be disclosed. We are receiving...
And quickly disclosed? Because one of the issues is the delays.
That's right. That's what I was going to get to. And that's the situation in America. There's really not much in the way of constraints on donations in America, but it's immediately transparent. I think it should be within a week, a month at the latest, that it's published that you received this donation, so people know that you've received a donation, who it's from, and how much it's for. But there should not be a cap on it. If it's your money, you should be able to do what you like with it. There shouldn't be any exclusions. If you're a property developer, cigarette company, alcohol, whatever it takes, doesn't matter. I mean, their money's as good as anybody else's. The idea is to stop buying influence. So why should one type of donor be any more likely to influence somebody than another type of donor? Doesn't make any sense. So I think you should be able to do what you like with your money, but as long as it's all disclosed.
Yeah, I'm really wedged on this issue, to be honest, because philosophically I think I agree with you in the sense that I take the view that, look, if it's a legal entity, whether it's a union or a business, in a democracy, in a capitalist structure, then so what? Why can't they? As long as I would have the disclosure immediately. It's got to be within 24 hours. The party receives it and has to go straight on a database so that it's there and accessible for all to see, journalists, the general public, and so on. Philosophically, I agree with that. But I also don't like this notion of buying influence. And I know, or at least buying the perception of influence. The thing I worry about is even if even if it's a bit of a two-card trick, where the pollies take the money from the big corporates or even the unions in the Labor Party and then they do what they want to some extent thereafter, the perception of buy and influence is also something that hurts democracy, I think. So I'm on the fence about it, but probably if I had to choose, leaning in your direction.
This perception thing, I mean, where does it end?
Well, that's true.
My answer is if you have a perception that it's buying influence and it's not buying influence, you've got a problem. Not the recipient.
And that's one of the reasons I've got little sympathy for the Liberals' complaints about the trade union movement. I mean, OK, the trade union movement give millions of dollars to the Labor Party each year. They are institutionally linked, and Labor both gets the benefit of that, and they pay the political price with all the whacks that they get, courtesy of the Liberal Party and all the rest of it. The Liberal Party gets a disproportionate of funds from big and small business compared to Labor, but it's all a little bit more hard to follow, and that's because they don't have those formal ties. Business likes to argue it's...
they wash it through free enterprise
well, we've seen a bit of that as well. I mean, not that the union movement, by the way, haven't had their own issues lately, but, at least there's an openness about the links between the union movement and the Labor Party.
There is an ethical sort of moral issue too, is that if you're funding political parties via taxpayers, you're taking people, the money that people have paid in taxes, and you're giving it to somebody or something or some party that they wouldn't, give the steam off their food for, and yet you're taking their taxes and giving it to them. I mean, there are Green supporters who are giving donations effectively to the Liberals. There are Liberal supporters giving donations to the Greens.
System.
I think that's a very questionable thing to do.
Can I quickly ask you, just before we run out of time, the news today that Nova Paris is not going to contest her seat. She'll no longer be a colleague of yours in the Senate. Any reflection on her time in the Parliament?
Yeah, I got on quite well with Nova, but I got the impression her heart was never in it. There are some senators who are quite passionate about the work they're doing and their causes and the things that they want to achieve, and then there are others who you sort of get the impression that they'd be just as happy if they weren't there. I never spoke to her about it, but I always got the impression that her heart really wasn't in it. So it's no huge surprise to me that she's decided to pull out. But she was a very pleasant lady to deal with. I get on pretty well with the Labor senators.
Significant to be the first Indigenous woman in the Senate?
Was she the first?
Woman, I think.
Woman,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, well, that's significant.
We also have Pat Dodson. Know about it.
Yeah, now that I know about it, I don't think of things in terms of
I know, I was just joking.
Gender or Indigenous background or anything. I just see people as people. We've got Pat Dodson in there now, of course.
Yep, that's true.
We're out of time. Right. David Leyonhjelm, we'll have you back. It is a long campaign. Thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, Anthony Albanese.